Some people make fortunes through innovation, discipline, and long hours. Others, they lie, cheat, and manipulate their way to massive wealth, and sometimes to legendary status. In this episode of the Money Compendium, we're diving into the shadowy world of financial deception, exploring 10 of the richest con artists in history, how they pulled off their scams, how much they made, and what happened when it all came crashing down. This isn't just about entertainment. These stories are reminders of how financial greed, charisma, and blind trust can be weaponized, and how even the smartest people can get taken for a ride. Let's get into it. Number 1. Charles Ponzi, the man whose name became immortalized in finance. Charles Ponzi didn't operate in the 1920s, but in 1919 and 1920, during the post-World War I boom. He promised investors outrageous returns, 50% profit in just 45 days, or 100% in 90 days. The scheme was supposedly built on buying and reselling international reply coupons, small vouchers that allowed someone to prepay postage across borders. In theory, Ponzi could profit from exchange rate differences. In reality, the logistics made it impossible. Instead, he paid earlier investors with the money from newer ones, creating the classic rob Peter to pay Paul fraud. At his peak, he took in around $15 million, the equivalent of more than $200 million today. He lived large in Boston, buying luxury cars, fine clothes, and a mansion, while investors believed he was a financial wizard. But when the scam collapsed in August 1920, tens of thousands of people lost their savings. His legacy? Permanent. His name defines the very crime he perfected, but compared to what came after, Ponzi almost looks small. Up next, a woman who conned America's banks by claiming to be the daughter of one of the richest men alive. Number 2. Cassie Chadwick. In the early 1900s, Cassie Chadwick pulled off what many historians still call the scam of the century. She convinced powerful bankers that she was the illegitimate daughter of Andrew Carnegie, the steel tycoon who was, at the time, one of the wealthiest men in the world. She forged promissory notes and legal papers that suggested Carnegie had secretly set aside a massive inheritance for her. Banks and lenders, eager to stay in the good graces of Carnegie's secret heir, lined up to loan her money. Cassie swindled an estimated $2 million before her arrest in 1904. In today's market, that $2 million would be roughly $70 million. She lived lavishly, giving tours of her mansion filled with expensive antiques and fake financial documents that reinforced her story. The con unraveled when bankers tried to confirm her claims with Carnegie himself. His reaction? Absolute confusion. He said he had no idea who she was. With her lies exposed, her empire of credit collapsed overnight. Cassie used fake lineage to trick the system. But the next scammer didn't fake family ties. She faked science itself and convinced Silicon Valley to write her checks. Number 3. Elizabeth Holmes. Elizabeth Holmes founded Theranos in 2003 with a promise that seemed revolutionary. A single drop of blood could run hundreds of medical tests cheaply and quickly. She crafted her image carefully, wearing black turtlenecks to channel Steve Jobs, speaking in a deep, controlled voice, and projecting the aura of a genius visionary. Her pitch convinced investors, corporate partners, and even government officials. Theranos raised over $700 million from investors, and at its peak, Holmes was listed as the world's youngest self-made female billionaire, with a net worth of about $4.5 billion on paper. The problem? The technology never worked. Whistleblowers and journalists eventually revealed that the machines were unreliable, and the company had been misleading patients, doctors, and investors. Holmes was convicted of fraud in 2022 and sentenced to prison, but her story remains a powerful reminder of what happens when branding and charisma eclipse reality. From Silicon Valley illusions, let's jump to one of Wall Street's biggest liars. Number 4. Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff ran the largest Ponzi scheme in history. For decades, he posed as a brilliant investor, promising steady, market-beating returns year after year. In truth, he never invested his clients' money at all. Instead, he fabricated account statements and paid old investors with money from new ones, keeping the illusion alive for more than 20 years. His fraud reached an estimated $65 billion in paper, though the actual cash loss was closer to $20 billion. He tricked not just individuals but also banks, charities, universities, and even celebrities. Madoff ran his scam out of a hidden floor in his Manhattan office, protected by his legitimate brokerage business that gave him credibility. When the 2008 financial crisis hit and too many clients tried to withdraw at once, the fraud finally collapsed. He was sentenced to 150 years in prison and died there in 2021. Madoff became the symbol of unchecked greed, blind trust, and systemic failure. But if he fooled Wall Street, the next man fooled entire governments while living like a king. Number 5. Allen Stanford. Allen Stanford ran Stanford International Bank, an offshore bank in Antigua that offered certificates of deposit with guaranteed returns far above what normal banks could deliver. He bought legitimacy through aggressive marketing, luxury sports sponsorships, especially in cricket, and by cultivating powerful political connections in the Caribbean and the US. At one point, Forbes listed him as a billionaire, and he was even knighted in Antigua. But it was all smoke and mirrors. Stanford's bank wasn't investing deposits safely. It was running a massive Ponzi scheme. In total, more than $7 billion was stolen from investors in over 100 countries. The scam collapsed in 2009 under federal investigation. Stanford was convicted in 2012 and sentenced to 110 years in prison. His fraud wasn't as famous as Madoff's, but it was one of the largest financial crimes in American history. And it devastated retirees and families across the globe. We've seen Ponzi invent the playbook, Cassie Chadwick bluff her way into America's banks, Elizabeth Holmes sell Silicon Valley on a dream. Bernie Madoff fool Wall Street for decades, and Allen Stanford swindle entire governments and tens of thousands of investors worldwide. Different faces, different tactics, but the same result: people blinded by promises of safety, trust, and easy wealth. But scams like these aren't just history. They're still happening today, hidden behind new technology, new buzzwords, and new promises. If you don't stay sharp, you're the target. Don't worry, we're not just here to entertain but to arm you with knowledge. Every like, comment, and subscribe helps us grow this community of people who refuse to be fooled. Number 6. Frank Abagnale Jr. Immortalized in Catch Me If You Can, Frank Abagnale Jr. lived one of the most audacious con man stories of the 20th century. By the time he was barely 21, he had impersonated airline pilots, lawyers, and even doctors. He used charm, forged documents, and quick wits to cash more than $2.5 million in fraudulent checks during the 1960s. He flew on airlines for free by dressing the part, walked through hospitals wearing a white coat he had bluffed his way into, and convinced banks to honor his fake checks simply because he looked and acted like he belonged. His scams weren't just about paper, they were about confidence. After prison time, Abagnale struck a deal with the FBI and began helping them track other fraudsters. He turned his gift for deception into a career of prevention. His life became a best-selling memoir and blockbuster movie, proof that sometimes the same skills that destroy can also rebuild. But while Frank faked professions, the next man faked an entire nation. Number 7. Gregor MacGregor. In the early 1800s, Scottish adventurer Gregor MacGregor pulled off what some historians call the boldest scam in history. He convinced investors across Britain and France that he was the ruler of a brand new Central American nation called Poyes. He printed maps, painted pictures of a thriving capital, even issued bonds and currency, all completely fictional. Hundreds of settlers bought land, packed their lives onto ships, and set sail for paradise. What they found was nothing but untouched jungle, mosquitoes, and starvation. Many never made it back. MacGregor raised the equivalent of billions in today's money from investors who thought they were buying into a utopia. The audacity was staggering. And when exposed, he slipped away with surprisingly little punishment and later resumed cons in Europe. He sold people not just a lie, but a dream. From fake countries to fake socialites, the next scammer proved you don't need maps and money, just Instagram followers and the right last name. Number 8. Anna Sorokin, Anna Delvey. In the 2010s, Anna Sorokin, posing as a wealthy German heiress under the name Anna Delvey, conned New York's elite. She checked into luxury hotels without paying, secured private jet rides she couldn't afford, and tricked friends into covering tens of thousands in expenses. Anna projected the lifestyle of wealth with designer clothes, champagne dinners, and carefully curated Instagram posts. Banks considered lending her millions to fund a private arts club. For a while, her performance fooled nearly everyone, not because she had money but because she understood the power of appearances. Her downfall came when the unpaid bills caught up. In 2019, she was convicted of multiple counts of grand larceny and theft of services. Her story inspired the Netflix series Inventing Anna, turning her into an unlikely pop culture icon. Anna showed how, in the influencer age, status itself could be the con. But decades earlier, another man proved that even world landmarks weren't safe from a master fraudster. Number 9. Victor Lustig. Victor Lustig was the con artist's con artist. His most infamous scam came in Paris during the 1920s, when he convinced scrap metal dealers that the Eiffel Tower was being sold for demolition. He wore custom suits, presented forged government credentials, and auctioned the monument off, not once, but twice. He also sold money printing boxes, contraptions that supposedly duplicated cash. Of course, the machines only worked long enough to let Lustig disappear with the buyer's money. His greatest trick, though, may have been swindling Al Capone out of $5,000 and escaping unharmed. Lustig had a rulebook of 10 Commandments of the Con, which included lines like, "Be a patient listener and never boast." He thrived not because of brute force, but because he understood people's desires and mirrored them back. While he scammed the wealthy of Europe and America, the next con man brought his grift to the frontier, where the Wild West had its own brand of fraud. Number 10. Good old Soapy Smith. Jefferson Randolph Soapy Smith became a legend of the American frontier. In the late 1800s, he ran an empire of swindles that stretched from Denver to Skagway, Alaska. His nickname came from his signature scam, selling bars of soap with hidden cash prizes. His accomplices, planted in the crowd, would win the rigged prizes, luring victims to spend more. But the soap racket was just the beginning. He organized rigged poker games, fake lotteries, and protection rackets. In Skagway, his gang was so powerful they practically ran the town, with Smith as the de facto boss. He embodied the Wild West outlaw spirit, but with words and trickery instead of guns, until the night a vigilante group confronted him in 1898. A shootout followed, and Smith was killed on the docks of Skagway, ending his reign. His story reminds us that scams evolve with the times. In the 1800s, it was soap and saloons. In the 1900s, forged checks and fake countries. In the 2000s, Silicon Valley promises and Instagram heiresses. Today's scams? They're happening online, dressed in crypto, AI, and social media. Different tools, same game. Someone always selling a dream too good to be true. From fake daughters to fictional nations, these con artists didn't just lie. They built empires on illusion. Their stories are cautionary tales, but also a strange form of financial history. Because every great scam reveals something about the time, the people, and the systems they exploited. Thanks again for watching the Money Compendium. If you liked this deep dive, let us know in the comments and hit that subscribe button to help us grow this channel. We appreciate every single one of you. So until we meet again, don't forget to think in decades, act in systems, and build your legacy. Just make sure to do it the honest way.